Everybody for joining us tonight for the virtual information session for the Masters of Science in School Counseling. My name is Tom Crash. I'm the Director of Graduate Admissions. I am joined by Dr. Julie Cerrito, the Program Coordinator for the Masters in School Counseling program. We have an excellent event planned for you where we're going to take you behind the scenes and help you preview your experience in our school counseling graduate program. The event should take between 30 and 40 minutes, I would say. The event will be recorded, right? So whether you are watching live or you're watching the recording, should you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact Dr. Cerrito or myself. We are happy to help in any way we can. But before we get any further, Dr. Cerrito, would you mind introducing yourself and, telling us a little more about who you are as a person and what you're doing when you're not professing, as a faculty member, maybe some of your research interests?
Sure, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're so happy you've decided to join us tonight and learn a little bit more about the school counseling program here at Commonwealth University Bloomsburg. My name is Julie Cerrito, and I serve as the program coordinator for school counseling. And so this is my fourth year at Commonwealth University Bloomsburg. And prior to arriving here, I spent a number of years at another institution, and I directed the school counseling program there. And then prior to that, I actually was a practicing school counselor for 12 years, and I worked in 2 different Pennsylvania public school districts. So I have a good blend of both the practical background of having served as a school counselor for a significant length of time, as well as, the background in academic experience, teaching classes, and leading and coordinating school counseling programs. So that's a little bit about my background. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology from Bloomsburg University, so I'm a Husky at heart. I have a master's degree in school counseling from the University of Scranton, and then I have a PhD in counselor education and supervision from Penn State University. So when I'm not professing, Tom, I love to travel. I love to take walks and exercise, and like to travel internationally. And I love to garden. That's one of my hobbies. And interior design, floral design, those kinds of things. So I have a creative element to me. In addition to the academician, there's a creative side to me as well.
Wow, that's impressive. Okay, so where was the coolest place that you've traveled recently?
Oh gosh, I have a favorite on the list. I love Turks and Caicos.
Oh yeah,
an island. That's one of my favorites. If it's just going to be relaxation, if it's going to be, something like history, I probably like Poland as being a really
yep, a lot of
interesting
good
place to visit. And I am part Polish, so it was really interesting to go and see my roots and have some great food. And so.
No, that's awesome. So, Dr. Cerrito, what are your research interests? When what are some of the things that you in the field of counseling and school counseling? What are some of the things that you're most interested in?
Yeah, so Tom, I have a wide variety of interests, and as school counselors, we kind of deal with it all, right? Within those realms of academic development, social emotional development, and then career development. So I really like examining kind of all of those different domain areas, those 3 different domain areas. But if I were to pick just one, I would definitely say career development is my area of interest, and specifically looking at youth career development. And I was an elementary school counselor, so I'm very interested in the elementary portion of career development. So a lot of people would say, gosh, is career development important in elementary school? And I would say absolutely it is, because that's when students are learning about who they are, their interests, their abilities, and really discovering the world of work. So there's a lot that we can do as educators to help prepare them for that next place, which is middle school, where again, they're, increasing their knowledge about professions in their area, in their geographic area, and things like that. So I love career development. I like looking at web-based online career guidance programs and how they can supplement the work that school counselors do, because there's a number of great web-based career development programs that are out there. So I enjoy looking and examining those. And so I would pretty much say career development and school counseling is my thing.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's great to hear. And also, again, that's a good kind of a preview into some of the things that students might be learning about or prepared to do by the time that they, leave with the graduate degree in school counseling. So that's really interesting. So, Dr. Cerrito, did you have a presentation then to show the group?
I do have a presentation, and I just want to welcome if there's, do you want to wait for questions at the end, Tom, or how do you prefer to handle it?
Yeah, no, that's a great topic. I should have mentioned that at the beginning. So if anybody has any questions, again, for the group that's watching live, you can feel free to put them in the Q&A. I'll be monitoring that, and I can relay those questions to Dr. Cerrito. Normally, we'll get some questions at the end. We'll pique some interest in some of these things that Dr. Cerrito is going to be talking about. And again, put them in the chat, you can put them in the Q&A, and I'll get them back to Dr. Cerrito to be answered. For those of you who are watching the recording, please feel free to reach out to Dr. Cerrito or I. You'll see our contact information here on the last slide. Happy to follow up and provide more detail on any of the topics covered.
Absolutely. And Tom, if you're thinking of things as I'm going through these slides, feel free to interrupt me, because chances are if you're thinking of them or have a question about something, our members in the audience might have that question too. So I always tell my students I don't mind being interrupted. So go ahead and interrupt if it
Well,
makes sense.
actually, we have a great question, and I'm sure this is a question that a lot of people are going to be wondering. For students who are a full-time teacher, is it possible to get all of the internship hours done while teaching?
That is a great question, and one that comes up a lot, Tom. And the answer is yes. We have to be creative about it, but we do have a number of teachers that are in our program that are completing their field placement hours, that are not leaving their jobs as teachers to do that. It will take, so field placement, there's a practicum, and then there's 2 semesters typically of internship. Some students do it in 1 semester, but if you're working full-time, you spread that internship out over 2 semesters, and then that makes it a little bit more doable. And obviously I work with the teachers who are in the program, and we kind of come up with a plan, because sometimes for teachers, there could be evening things happening that the school counselor is doing, right? Like a college application night or a FAFSA frenzy or something like that. So there's opportunities that it doesn't necessarily have to occur within that 8 to 4 school day. But, sometimes our teachers will use planning periods. Sometimes they'll come in early. They may, be able to work some summer hours with the school counselor if the school counselor works those hours. And there's some things that they could probably do at home on their own, preparing for guidance lessons and things like that. So those hours count as well. And then the class time that we have doing supervision, that counts also. So there's definitely ways to grab those hours. I'm going to say we have to be creative, and you have to be willing to, put the time in, because obviously for teachers, you're working the same hours as a school counselor. So it looks different than someone who's going in and who isn't a teacher. They're able to accumulate those hours faster, perhaps, but there's no mad dash to the finish line, right? So it's, you do it, and I think that's a nice thing about this program is you do it at the pace that makes sense to you. If you have family obligations or other career obligations, it's okay to go a little slower, and lots of our students do.
Great. Okay, go ahead, Dr. Cerrito.
All right, so welcome everyone once again to our virtual information session. We're going to be talking about the Master of Science degree in school counseling this evening. And so we'll start off talking about why the Master of Science in school counseling, what makes our program unique, what makes us different. And I'm really proud to be part of the program here. We are a 48 credit master's degree. And we'll take a look at the curriculum in a few future slides here, but I think one of the nice things, there's a number of nice things about the program. One of them is that it is a 48 credit program. There are lots of programs in the state and across the country that require quite a larger number of credits. And I've been really happy that we've been able to stay at the 48 credit degree, but still offer the range of courses that we are able to, so that students can finish, if they're going full-time, in about 2 years. So we have a number of different specific school counseling courses that are specific to the major and the graduate degree of school counseling. We have a number of generalized counseling classes that are for students who, even if they decide not to enter school counseling, they could be a counselor in a different way. So working for an agency, or maybe working for a college or a university, those are options as well. And then kind of the third piece of our curriculum is we offer educational leadership classes. And I think, again, that's something that makes us a little different, because you have the opportunity to take a few courses with other school professionals like principals, superintendents, teachers, And so you're learning about their roles just as much as they're learning about your role as the school counselor. So I think it's that blending and that harmonious blending, as I like to say, of kind of those three things coming together that really enable students to be able to exit the program and work as a school counselor, which they're trained to do, or in other fields if they so choose. So I think that that's a real highlight to the Master of Science degree in school counseling, and what makes this unique. I would also say that we are an online program, so all of the courses are offered online, which is great for students who are working professionals and who have busy lives and maybe don't want to drive to campus in the evenings and take classes, that they can do that from the comfort of their own home. So our courses are online. Our field experiences, like I mentioned before about practicum and internship, are face-to-face in the schools. But the nice thing about that is that they can be completed in your hometown geographic area within Pennsylvania. So if you're working as a teacher, lots of our teachers want to complete those hours in their home school districts with their school counselors within their districts. So I think all of those are really nice features to the program. Tom, am I missing anything that you want to add?
Yeah, no, I think you hit most of the most important topics. So when you were a prospective student to the school counseling program, or when you are working with prospective students, what are some of the ways that an undergraduate student right now, or someone who's currently working in the field and looking to go back to school, how would they know that this is the right thing? Like, what are some of the things that, oh, if you like this, you might like this too? Right? Like, what are some of the subjects that's like, what's the checkpoint? You're like, okay, I like this, I like this, I like this. That means I might like school counseling.
Yeah, so that's a great question, Tom. So some of the students that, come to this program, I would say they enjoy working with youth. They want to work with children. They want to work with adolescents. They enjoy being in a school environment, in an educational environment. So sometimes we'll get students who say, I really like the atmosphere of a school, but I don't think I want to be a teacher. But I still would really like to work in a school. So this is a nice option for those folks who want to be in a school but don't really see themselves as teachers, like doing that 8 hours a day. So I would say that definitely. I would say for students who have psychology backgrounds, sociology backgrounds, social work backgrounds, who really want to work with youth, prefer a school setting, this program is ideal for them. So I would say definitely individuals. And I think the other draw to school counseling is that it's for students who want and we talk about this in a few slides, but for students who really like predictability in their schedule. So I think one of the nice things that students recognize about school counseling is that you have a predictable schedule. You do work from 8 to 4 Monday through Friday, and you're there, but you're not working evenings typically unless there's something special going on in the school, and you're not working weekends. And you're not typically working in the summer either, unless there's extra, hours available for that. So those are real draws for students, because I think it's a nice balance. It's a nice work-life balance for a lot of folks.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I would not have thought that. Great.
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and we'll just move forward here too. And I covered a few of these, so I'm just going to go through them quickly. Regarding our program overview, our courses are delivered 100% online. I mentioned before our field placements, which are practicum and internship, are in the schools, and we work with you to decide on where that placement is going to be. So it's not like we just say, we're going to put you somewhere and you have to figure out how you're going to drive there and, how many hours it's going to take to get there. So we really work with you to decide on where is the best fit for you. And we truly have students all the way from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh. And, we work with school counselors in your geographic area within Pennsylvania to find the right fit or the right school for you. So our students will do field work in an elementary school, a middle school, and a high school, because the certification, as you'll see down a couple bullet points here, is a PK through 12 certification. So in the state of Pennsylvania, that certificate enables you to work at an elementary level, a middle school level, or a high school level. So I think that's a really nice feature. Back when I was getting certified, Tom, we had to choose either elementary or secondary. It was not a PK through 12 cert. So you were more limited in your job opportunities. And since then, Pennsylvania has moved to this certificate that does enable students to be certified PK through 12. So I mentioned before, we're a 48 credit program, and I think that's, a really nice way. It's feasible for students to complete the program within 2 years if they're doing it full time, but students can also choose to have part-time options if they want to. We have students who take as little as one class a semester because that's what works for them. And that's perfectly okay. Students have up to 6 years to complete their degree. So you can move as quickly through the program or, as slowly as the program is, based upon your unique needs. We do offer courses in the summer, and we typically offer courses in the winter. So again, for teachers and for other working professionals, those are really nice times because sometimes the summer is an off time where, maybe you have a little bit more time because, you're not working as a teacher. So we have 4-week sessions, 6-week sessions, 12-week sessions, and offer courses in those different sessions within the summer. And we do offer some winter classes. So those are also really nice ways to be able to pick up credits and kind of expedite that degree. We are approved through the Pennsylvania Department of Education, which enables us to offer that PK through 12 certification to work at those 3 different levels, whatever level you choose. Sometimes we have students who will start out at high school level and realize that they really want to work with younger students, and then they may, seek a job out at the elementary school level, which is perfectly fine. And I think the other nice piece to the program is that it's a great fit for students from any undergraduate major. So we have students who are history majors, communications majors, you name it. And then we have students from kind of more of those typical helping professions majors. So psychology, sociology, social work, education, special education, exceptionalities, those kinds of things, speech pathology. So we have a lot of different individuals that come at all different places in their life. Some are right out of undergraduate programs. Others have, lots of life experience. They've had families and have worked jobs and they're returning to do something different. So I think that blend of having traditional graduate students, traditional meaning that they come right from undergrad to grad, and some of, the maybe non-traditional students who have worked for a while are then coming back to either seek certification or a master's degree.
So, Dr. Streeto, for a student who doesn't have a background in education or in psychology or social work, are there any barriers? Is there anything that students should be apprehensive about? Like, oh, my undergrad degree is in communications, therefore I'm going to struggle with this out of the gate. Is there any validity to that, or is that it's something you could dispel?
I don't think so, Tom, because we really train you from the ground up. So, there's certain courses that when we, have new students that are great first semester courses to take. So an example would be like orientation to professional school counseling, which is really all about what is the role of a school counselor? What do school counselors do? What is the American School Counselor Association national model? How does that guide the work that we do? We have a course which is in helping professions, which is helping skills, and which is basically all those attending skills and counseling skills, paraphrasing, summarizing. So we really assume and make the assumption that students don't have that background, because some may, and certainly if they have a background in education or a background in psychology or something like that, there is some crossover without a doubt. And it may be less of a steep learning curve, but I have yet to see any student who has come from an undergraduate major that has really struggled to kind of learn this. I almost feel like we're sort of, people who go into the counseling profession, Tom, are oftentimes, in my opinion, sort of hardwired for helping people. And there's something in them that really desires that and wants that. And so our job is really to help you learn the official skills, because sometimes students will say, well, I counsel, my roommate or my friend, and they may very well be doing that, but we're teaching you more of the professional skills and how to be able to do that. So, your background, of course, is, important in whatever that degree is in, but I think there's a lot of parallels too. So, I think at quick glance, we can say, oh, communications, what does that have to do with being a school counselor? But, communications is our foundation. It's how we interact with students, how we interact with parents, superintendents, principals, teachers. So, how communications, that's a wonderful background. We're all about communicating in this profession. So I think no matter what your degree is in, we can clearly see some parallels.
Yeah. No, that's great to hear. My guess is probably a lot of students too that they've built up this, they've acquired over their, the professional or academic career some degree of emotional intelligence. And you're right, right. And you mentioned, the master's program is kind of like finishing school for students who A, have an interest in doing that, and B, have an aptitude in working with other, with other people to certain degrees.
Mhm.
And are looking to make a career out of this. So that's really interesting. We do have some really good questions in the Q&A. So one question is, how many field placement hours are required for the practicum and the internships?
Great question. So for practicum, it's 100 hours, and students will do that in one semester. And so if you divide that out, just to kind of give you a general idea, a lot of times students will say, well, how much time is really involved? So if we divide 100 by about a 15-week semester, you're looking about six to 7 hours per week in, your placement. But you also have an hour and a half of supervision with whoever the faculty member is. Typically it's myself that teaches those field placement classes, and that hour and a half counts. And some of the work that you prepare to do for your placement, like if you're preparing guidance lessons to go into the classroom, that curriculum that you're preparing at home, some of that time can count. So there's ways to accrue hours that don't necessarily have to all be face to face. So I would say, look at the numbers, but recognize that it's amazing. I think sometimes students see the number of field placement hours and they think to, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to get these hours? And then before you know it, they get those hours. It's just a way of, kind of looking at it and breaking it down and chunking it. So it's 100 hours for the practicum. And then for the internship experience, that is 600 hours, but that can be spread out over 2 semesters. So sometimes we have students who are full-time and, they're maybe not working a job and they want to do all 600 hours in one semester. They would register for 6 credits, 600 hours all in one semester. But for students, and I would say a good majority of our students are breaking that up, and they're doing 3 credits and 3 credits and 300 hours and 300 hours.
Great.
Good question.
Do you need to take all the classes if you already have a master's degree? I think
If you
part of that might
already
be,
have,
do we accept transfer credits is probably the follow-up question.
yes, yeah. So it depends on what your master's degree is in and how comparable your classes are to the required curriculum. So we do have a certification only. So it's called a postmaster's certificate in school counseling. So in addition to the Master of Science degree in school counseling, we also offer a postmaster's certificate in school counseling. And that is specifically for the students who already have a master's degree in counseling or a related field and are just looking for the certificate because they don't need another master's degree. So then the question becomes, what courses did they take as part of their master's degree that may be comparable to the courses that we require for the school counseling master's degree? So an example of this, Tom, might be, someone who's coming from like a clinical mental health background. Well, they've probably taken a course in appraisal techniques. They've probably taken group counseling. They've probably taken career counseling. So, some of those courses would count. It really depends on what your master's degree is in. And what I typically do with students is kind of look at the courses they took and then match that up with the courses that are required. And, sometimes there's some courses that are, we can say, oh, yeah, those are equivalencies. And sometimes even though they have a master's degree, it's in a field that is not as related to school counseling. So, there's not a lot of credits that could be applied. So it's more on a case-by-case basis because everyone's master's degree looks a little different in terms of the coursework that's required and what their degree is in.
Sure. Okay. Does the program help find internship placements within our geographical area? And if so, is it only for students in the state of Pennsylvania?
Great question. So yes, we can help you find those. Obviously, I'm going to be more familiar with, the Bloomsburg area and our school counselors, and then moving kind of in northeastern Pennsylvania, and a little bit about South Central and some of those areas. So, we would kind of look at where you're located. And sometimes I've worked with school counselors in your geographic area that I can make suggestions and say, oh, Eastern York, we've had a school counselor, there that we've worked with in the past. I would recommend reaching out to this person. So sometimes I do, with being in the profession as long as I've been in, know some people in those, parts of Pennsylvania that I can recommend. But there are times where, you may be from an area and I would say, gosh, I really don't know anyone, but why don't, do you have some preferences? Why don't you reach out to this school or to that school? So we would work with you. It's a collaborative partnership in finding those placements. It's not necessarily just me doing it or just you doing it, but it's kind of working together on that. And there was a second part of that question, Tom, which was,
does that only extend to students that live in Pennsylvania?
That's a great question. So you don't have to live in Pennsylvania to come to school in Pennsylvania, but we do tell students that this certification is through the Pennsylvania Department of Education. So if you are looking to become certified as a school counselor in another state, we can ensure you that you meet the requirements here in Pennsylvania, but we can't 100% ensure that you will meet the requirements in Rhode Island, for example. We're pretty sure that in Pennsylvania that our standards are stringent enough and strong enough that some states will grant reciprocity for that certificate. But we really tell students, because that changes, regularly, and it's a state by state thing. Every state has their own requirements. So we certify school counselors here in the state of Pennsylvania. So we always recommend, if you're out of state, get that Pennsylvania and you want to come to a program like the one here at Bloomsburg, we would recommend that you get certified in Pennsylvania. And then if you want to, get certified in New York or New Jersey or some of those other places, it's sometimes easier to have that PA cert and transform it into another state cert than it is for you to graduate from a Pennsylvania master's program and then try to seek certification in like a state like Maryland, for example. Does that make sense?
It does. Yep, it does. So we had questions about the admission process. I know we'll be getting to that here shortly, but that is a very good question to whoever who has asked. What is considered part-time?
So part-time can be as little as 3 credits. All of our classes are at least 3 credits. So part-time can be 3 credits. It can be, 6 credits. So in graduate school, that I would say that's the one thing that graduate students have to get used to. When you're an undergrad, full-time is considered anywhere from, 12 to 18 credits, and most students are taking 15 credits. In graduate school, it's a little different. So a full-time student is typically taking 9 credits. Every once in a while, we have a student who likes to kind of extend themselves and take up to 12 credits, but we really don't recommend doing more than 12 credits. Graduate school is different than undergraduate, so the classes are more intense. There's more work typically involved with them, and so you take less credits. So you'd be looking at full-time is typically 9 to 12, and part-time would be somewhere between 3 to 6 credits.
How many credits is the postmaster certificate, and would it be a good fit for someone with a master's of education?
So the postmaster certificate does not, so it can be up to the number, there's not a, it ranges, I guess would be the short answer for the postmaster certificate, because someone coming in who has a lot of parallel courses is going to need less credits than someone who's coming in and doesn't have a lot of parallel courses. So someone with an education, that's pretty broad. Are we talking special education? Are we talking, early childhood, or, what specifically in education, and looking at the, and where they took it. So that's the other, piece of it is, where is your master's degree from? Is it from, a Bloomsburg campus or Lock Haven or Mansfield, or is it from somewhere else? There's not really a great solid answer to that without looking at someone's transcript and seeing how many credits they would need. And sometimes there are instances where there's so few credits that we can transfer because there's nothing parallel that they took as part of their master's degree, that it makes more sense for those students to do a master's degree, because they're practically going to do just as many credits for a postmaster's certificate as they would for a master's degree. So if we do like that, if we do kind of that transcript analysis, and we recognize, well, we can only give you credit for a 3 credit research class, but you still need the rest of these courses. Sometimes we recommend that students will just go for the master's degree because the postmaster's certificate is going to be practically just as many credits.
Follow-up question there. Are students able to get their transcripts evaluated before applying?
Yes. So they could, if they would like, they could email me. And generally the way that that works is they'll let me know that they're interested, and they could, email me. I will send them what is required for school counseling, and they will crosswalk and kind of insert in on that paper courses that they believe are comparable, and then send that back to me. But when they look, when someone looks at the courses that are required, also they can do kind of their own self-analysis and figure, do I have a course that sounds like it would be similar to this? So when we get to that later in this presentation, we'll actually pull up all of the required courses for the degree. So our members in the audience who are thinking, am I eligible for a postmaster certificate, may be able to look at those courses and make some quick snap judgments to decide, well, I really don't have a lot of classes that are similar to what these courses are. Or, I do have quite a few courses that I took that were similar.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
Sure. Speaking of curriculum, here we are on this slide here to look at the required counseling courses. So those of you who have a master's degree in a field, you can see these are all of the courses that are specific to counseling that are required. So we have some beginning level courses in counseling skills and helping relationships, career development and post-secondary readiness, appraisal techniques, group counseling and leadership skills, human growth and development, multicultural counseling competency, orientation to professional school counseling, contemporary issues in professional school counseling, practicum in school counseling, internship in school counseling, and then there is a 3-credit elective that you can take for a counseling course. So those are all of the required courses in counseling. And on this next slide, you can see the required courses, because remember I said it's sort of that blend of counseling, school counseling, and educational leadership. On this slide, you can see the educational leadership courses that are required. So we have a course in organizational behavior and program development, data-driven decisions, school law and finance, and then a course in educational research and writing. So at a quick glance, if you're wondering if you have a master's degree, you can kind of look at those courses that we just reviewed and, think to yourself, well, did I have any coursework in this particular area? Maybe if you're coming from an educational background, perhaps you took a course in data decision making, or you took a course in research and writing. So, those might be ones that would be comparable.
Well, and so Dr. Cerrito, question for you. I see a couple classes there that students might be surprised to see, and I don't know, maybe they might not be surprised. I'm surprised to see it. But the school law and finance and data-driven decisions, can you talk a little bit about what students might be doing there? That seems to be more of kind of like a big picture look and less on, inner or intrapersonal communication skills.
Yeah, so those courses, Tom, are school law. It talks about ethics as well, and school law, ethics, and finance. That course in particular really seems to be a favorite of students because they're learning all about school law and cases and how to make decisions. And we know that as school counselors, there's a lot of decision making, and there's some tricky ethical situations that we can be faced with. So kind of talking those through is really important. And that's a course, so like data-driven decisions and school law, ethics, and finance, could potentially be taking those with students who are going to be teachers, master's degrees in education, students who are looking to be principals or superintendents. So that's a really nice blend of kind of having classes with some of those people that as school counselors will be working with and interfacing with on a daily basis. So I think those classes are really important. So the school law, ethics, and finance really does focus on, some of the school law and cases, and then data-driven decisions is all about how do we use the data that school has to be able to make good decisions about our programs as school counselors or as educational leaders. So it's kind of looking at what data is available within schools, what is data that we can collect, and how can that guide us to better programming for our students.
Great. That's interesting. Great. Thank you.
Sure. All right. So we're looking at some professional experiences here that are part of the program. So we do have a variety of course embedded projects that are inclusive in a lot of the coursework that you'll be doing. In addition, we have a required 3-credit practicum and 6-credit internship in the schools, as I mentioned before. We do have an applied approach to instruction. I like to tell my students that I try to give them assignments that they're not going to sit back and question, why are we doing this? Because I let them know this is why this is important. This is what you're going to have to do when you're a school counselor, and this is why it's important to do it now. So I think there's a method to a lot of the assignments that we tend to give in classes, that there's a deeper meaning to them. It's not just about busy work. It's not just about, inserting a grade, but it's more about how is this analogous to the work that you'd actually be doing as a school counselor. And so our professors are oftentimes, either former school counselors, like in the case of myself. Sometimes we have current school counselors who will teach classes for us, as well as other educational and counseling professionals. So it really is a nice blend, because I think the thing about school counseling is that oftentimes we straddle those two areas of one foot in education and one foot in counseling. And so we kind of blend the both of them, because the truth is that school counselors are counselors with an expertise in educational settings.
Well, and I think one of the things that's interesting here is, as you're looking at preparing school counselors to be, working in the field, and this is something that came up in the alumni virtual alumni panel. So for those of you who are watching right now, we have a virtual alumni panel with Dr. Cerrito and I believe 4 recent graduates. And, they were kind of walking everybody through a day in their life. And, we had a great panel discussion. I think it was something like 60 minutes, but we easily could have gone 2 hours there. There are so many interesting topics to get into. But one of the things that came up is, when you're a school counselor, you might be the only person in the building that has this skill set and this degree of knowledge, right? You have a lot of smart people in the building, there's no question, but they have different areas of specialty, most of which are going to be in a teaching field, right? They went to school to be teachers, and that's what they're prepared to be. So the school counseling aspect is very, very different. There's an educational component to it, it would seem. However, again, you're going to be a part of a very small group of people at sometimes, a big school could be a small school, but like you're the only person that has that skill set. So the role that you play at any school is tremendously important. And for a lot of students, that's probably the most important set of interactions that they're going to have over the course of a day. I mean, school is so important. I'm not saying anything that's really groundbreaking by any means, but the role that you play as a school counselor is important. So your preparation is going to be important as well.
Absolutely, Tom. And so in addition to being a school counselor, obviously we want our students to go out and work as school counselors, but there are other career options. And I think that that's important, because sometimes when I meet with students, they'll say, I'm really hesitant to get a degree in school counseling because what if I don't get hired as a school counselor? And I'll say, well, there's lots of other things you can do. You still are a counselor, and there's lots of agencies and other types of work that you can engage in. And so I think my advice would be don't be disillusioned by the title of it being school counseling, thinking that that's the only job that you can do, because we do have students who work in other fields. Of course, we have a great number of students who work as school counselors, but we have students who also work in mental health settings as counselors. They may work for nonprofit agencies or social service agencies. They may work in a college counseling center or on a college campus. They can do health and wellness counseling, sometimes career counseling. We know that there's career development offices on campus that sometimes they will hire students who have backgrounds in who are school counselors, because they also have knowledge of career counseling. They can do career advising and coaching, sometimes drug and alcohol counseling, as well as admissions counseling. So there is a variety of different career options out there besides for school counseling. So it's not like if you don't get hired as a school counselor, you can't find a job in another fields that's related to counseling.
And question for you, Dr. Cerrito. And this had come up in Q&A a little bit earlier, but is this a program that an individual who is interested in becoming a school counselor and possibly an LPC could pursue? For example, can an internship and a practicum in the program align with LPC requirements? That's a great question.
So that's a great question. Yes. So the program, so if we look at LPC in Pennsylvania, it requires you to have a 48 credit master's degree, which we do meet the 48 credit requirement. It also requires you to do a 100-hour practicum and a 600-hour internship. So in order to just do so the state, in order to be a school counselor, only requires 420 hours. And we previously used to just do 420 hours, but we have, with our new curriculum, have upped that. So now we are a 600-hour internship. So the question is a really good one. So we have students who are interested in being school counselors and then also becoming LPCs at some point, licensed professional counselors. And so for those students, they may do the 48 credit degree, perhaps get a job as a school counselor, and then they may wish to come back for those 12 additional credits, because you actually need 60 credits in order to be an LPC, but your degree has to be 48 credits. So you can tack on 12 additional credits and you can do those postmasters. In addition, you have to also do postmasters experience anyway. So you need to have at least a minimum of 2 years of postmasters supervised experience. So one of the nice things about this program is that you could be working a job as a school counselor and being supervised and doing your postmasters experience and also taking credits. So it allows you with 48 credits to be eligible for a job sooner than it would be if you just did a straight 60 credits. So it is possible to become licensed in the future if you want to. It would mean kind of an additional step. And some students want to do that and some students don't. And that's why we didn't increase to 60 credits, because to go 60 credits means that everyone has to do it. And we know that some of our students, they may not be interested in LPC, but yet we wanted to create that opening for our students who did want to pursue that pathway in the future.
Great, thank you.
And certainly we can talk more about, school counseling and LPC and things like that. If you have additional questions, I'm happy to talk about that. So let's talk about job outlook. Speaking of, we talk about some students worrying about, well, what happens if I don't get hired as a school counselor? But let's look at some of the projected growth. So if we're looking at projected growth by the year 2032, we are looking at a 5% increase according to the Occupational Outlook Handbook. And so there are currently 342,400 school counselors employed as of 2022. And by 2032, we're projecting that there'll be 360,800 school counselors. So that is an 18,400 increase. So it is faster than the average for all other occupations. And we'll look at salary, because that's important too. We know that, going to graduate school and making that decision is not just a time investment, but it's also a financial investment. So sometimes students have concerns or wonder about the return on their investment. So if we look at nationwide in terms of school counselors, what they're making, there is a median salary of $60,140. And again, this is taken from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. If we break that down and drill that down a little bit further and look specifically at the state of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania is even a little higher than that median salary, and the mean salary or the average salary in Pennsylvania is $66,080. And the range is somewhere between a low of $40,460 to a high of $99,150. And, obviously there's different parts of the state and different school districts. We have private, we have public, we have charter. So there's a lot of variables. We see that's a pretty big range, obviously, but that's why we come up with that mean salary of $66,000. Most individuals are employed in elementary and secondary schools as school counselors.
And if you're looking for some additional information on, okay, so like, what am I doing, and what does day to day look like? How does that compare with maybe that as a role of a teacher, or if I'm coming, from a different career or different academic background? Really, that virtual alumni panel discussion was extremely productive. And Dr. Cerrito's graduates did a great job of really like expanding on, this is what I do every day. This is what the transition was like going from grad school to the field. They did a great job of portraying, this is what the field is. So if you're looking for some additional information, and one of the things they talk about is that work-life balance, of what it's like to be a school counselor, and like when does the work day end, and what type of work, you have nights and weekends? If so, what are you doing? Those types of things. They got very granular. So I would strongly recommend watching that.
Thanks, Tom. That's a great point. So sometimes in this next slide, why school counseling? So we know the field of counseling is very broad. There are many subspecialty areas within counseling, and sometimes we'll have students that will come and they'll say, I really want to be a counselor, but I just don't know what kind of counselor I want to be. Knowing that we have career counselors, we have marriage and family counselors, we have clinical mental health counselors, we have rehabilitation counselors. The umbrella of counseling is really broad, and sometimes it's hard for folks to narrow that down and decide on a specific subspecialty area of counseling. So, not that, finances are, important to some and maybe not so important to others, but if we look at that median salary and kind of job outlooks at the top of this slide, we can see that, based upon the salary of school counselors, one of the things that is attractive to individuals is the salary of school counseling, because it does tend to be quite a bit higher than some of the other subspecialty areas of counseling. So if we kind of look at those numbers, and again, this is based upon the Occupational Outlook Handbook, we have marriage and family counselors at 56.5, with 71,200 jobs, mental health counselors at 49.7 with almost 400,000 jobs, and rehabilitation counselors at 39.9 with 84,800 jobs. So those are just some things to consider in terms of, as you're deciding to make that financial investment, and what's important to you. And speaking about the job and looking at what school counselors do, they're really there to support students. And remember, there's those 3 domain areas that we work with students in, which is academic development, social emotional development, and career development. As Tom mentioned, a lot of our graduates and a lot of school counselors, I think some things that they really appreciate about the profession is that you do have those consistent and regular working hours. So you can count on being at work from a certain time in the morning until a certain time at night. You can count on typically having your summers off with pay. Sometimes school counselors are contracted to work a number of days in the summer, but typically that comes with additional compensation above and beyond what your yearly salary is. A lot of times individuals like, if they have families, that they're not working in the evenings, that they're not working on weekends, and that they're not on call to, handle emergency phone calls, in the middle of the night or holidays or things like that. So again, those are some things to think about as we all consider, our balancing our work life and our family lives, because those are certainly important things to consider. Do we have a question in the chat, Tom?
We do. It's about the application and admission process.
Oh, okay. We will get to that question in just a moment here. The other thing that I'll say before we move off of this slide is, again, in talking to our students, the thing that's nice about school counseling is that it's a guaranteed salary. So as long as you're showing up and you're doing your job, you're getting that salary. If we look at some other types of counseling, it could be dependent upon whether or not your clients show up. So for example, if you're a marriage and family counselor and you are going to see 5 clients within a day, and 2 no show and 1 calls in sick, and you only end up with 1, your salary may reflect that. So there's a little bit more risk involved, perhaps, unless you're working for an agency and then you're, getting paid regardless of whether or not clients show up. But I know for some individuals, there becomes a little bit of risk involved if, their salary is dependent upon whether or not people show. Where in a school counseling position, even if students are absent, there's plenty more students for you to work with. So we're not as dependent upon clients or students kind of showing up as part of our salary. All right, so we talked a little bit about that alumni panel. Please do check that out on this slide. We just have a number of different school districts that have hired our school counselors in the local area and beyond. We have students who are in Colorado and Aspen School District. We have students locally here in Berwick and Millville and Benton, and students who do go out of state and look for jobs. I've had students who have gone as far as California and sought certification in school counseling out in California. Some of our neighboring states of New York, New Jersey, Maryland, Connecticut are popular ones. Sometimes Florida. I have a student who got certified in Florida last semester and hired. So certainly, we train you to be school counselors here in Pennsylvania, but that doesn't mean that your certificate isn't valid other places. So it is possible to take that certificate and to be granted reciprocity for that certificate to then work as a school counselor in another state. And there are a lot of states that need school counselors. Virginia is one in particular that's always looking to hire both teachers, educators, and school counselors. So here we get to the part on the application and admission. And so there is an online application. You will submit an undergraduate transcript, 3.0 undergraduate GPA. If your GPA is lower than that, we can consider you on a probationary basis. You will include a statement of goals where you're going to talk about your reasons for pursuing graduate study as a school counselor. You will include a current resume, 3 letters of recommendation. And in those 3 letters of recommendation, you will address hopefully the person who you're asking to do them will address the applicant's academic suitability and professional demeanor for becoming a school counselor. And then there is my contact information, my email address, as well as my phone number if you want to reach out and be in touch.
And Dr. Strudo, so the question was concerning conditional acceptance and how financial aid might be affected. So first of all, the conditional acceptance, is that something that you would do for the master's in school counseling program?
Yeah, so sometimes if students do not have if the undergraduate GPA requirement of 3.0, we can accept them conditionally. Excuse me. And so with that, financial aid is one of those things that is hard to answer questions. I always recommend that students go to financial aid directly to ask questions like, number of credits that they need to be enrolled in. And sometimes some students will have, financial compensation through a job or something like that. So it really varies from person to person. So typically with graduate school, there's no financial aid the way that it exists at the undergraduate level. Financial aid comes in the form of student loans. And, so there's some guidelines around, how do you get student loans and do you have to be enrolled in a certain number of credits for student loans? So typically, my understanding is, you have to have at least, I don't even want to speak. At one time it was 6 credits. It might be 3 credits now, but that is really a question to follow up with the financial aid office, because they can guide you in terms of, how many credits you need to have. So if you're accepted on a provisional basis or probationary basis, it just means that you can't take more than 6 credits that very first semester. But if you're successful and you earn the 3.0 GPA, that is then lifted and you are able then to take, 9 credits or 12 credits for subsequent semesters. So it's not something that hangs with you throughout your entire graduate study, but it limits you in that first semester to make sure that you're successful in graduate school before we kind of open those gates and say, yeah, come and take 12 credits, because taking 12 credits is a heavy load. And, if you have a lower undergraduate GPA, there's a chance that, students could become really overwhelmed that first semester. And we don't want that. We want our students to be successful. So by limiting those number of credits, we can ensure that they're successful with that number of credits. And then we can kind of open up and they can take more credits if they wish.
And I see Yamina has a great question. If she's close to finishing her bachelor's degree, but would like to apply for this program, am I able to submit my unofficial transcript until I get my official one?
Absolutely, yes. And you can get a decision for the program even before you graduate. And then what they will do, Rachel is in graduate admissions, and she's wonderful. So she will, give you, we will review your application, and she will let you know, and she'll say, pending a degree conferred transcript. So, there would be sort of a condition on it that you're accepted pending that we do receive that transcript once you finish your coursework.
Yes, and keep in mind, if you're a current undergraduate student right now, again, like Dr. Cerrito mentioned, you don't have to wait until you have completed your degree in order to apply. You can apply basically at the beginning of your senior year, knowing full well that you're looking to enroll in the program after you graduate from college. The only thing we would need is just the final college transcripts after you do graduate. But you can you can apply and have been admitted based on basically your college transcript up into the end of your junior year, if that makes sense.
Yes, yeah, that's a great question. No, you do not have to wait. If you are ready, I know for me, I jumped right from an undergrad program into a grad program. So I was applying when I still was a student at Bloomsburg for a graduate program. And then, as long as I graduated on time and as long as that transcript made it to them, there was no problem.
So Dr. Cerrito, one question I had for you is, so what was your decision point to say, I want to go into school counseling? Your undergrad degree you mentioned was in psychology. Psychology is a great degree, gives you a lot of options from which to choose. Why did you choose school or school counseling?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Tom. I was fortunate enough in my undergraduate psychology program to do a practicum placement. And at that point in time, I thought I wanted to be a school psychologist. So I went to my professor here at Bloomsburg and I said, I want to be a school psychologist. And, they said, great, so we're going to hook you up with a school psychologist. And I did my practicum placement for a semester with a school psychologist, and I really, really enjoyed it. But as part of that experience, I was also able to shadow a school counselor in the building because they worked really closely, the school psychologist and the school counselor. And in doing so, I realized that I preferred ongoing relationships with my students. So when you're a school counselor, you get to see them move from grade level to grade level. So for example, I worked in a K-5 building. And so, I'd watch them grow up basically from kindergarten to first grade to second grade. And, when they were in fifth grade, I would say, how long have we been friends for? And they would say 6 years now. So it was really neat to be able to see that, to see them evolve and develop, where school psychology is a little different because it's less counseling and more testing. So it's definitely, more kind of rooted in placement of students who need special education services, who need gifted support services, where you're conducting a battery of assessments with them. You're meeting with the students one-on-one, you're doing the assessments, you're writing a report, you're meeting with the family, and then you are, placing them in if they need special education or if they're going to be in regular education. And then you're moving on to the next student. You're not necessarily going to work with that family or work with that student after that one encounter. And so for me personally, I really like the opportunity to be able to continue working with students, for an entire academic year and then across grade levels. So that for me was it was serendipitous in the sense that I didn't go in thinking I want to be a school counselor. I was a psychology major and I said, I want to be a school psychologist. And I didn't realize what school psychology meant. And it's much more heavily based on testing and assessment than it is on counseling. And I preferred the counseling aspect more.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. If a student has a 3.0 at their master's level degree, is that not factored? My lower GPA will be evaluated with my bachelor's degree, so basically the student has a 2.9 GPA as an undergraduate. However, they have a 3.0 with their master's degree GPA. Would the student be, just preliminarily, would the student be admitted as a probationary student, or would they be offered full admission, just in a rough estimate? It's a good question.
So typically for probationary, because it's hovering right on that 3.0, and the undergraduate does not meet that. So, it's one of those decisions where, with that particular student, we would again, want to be careful to make sure that they were successful in graduate studies, because a 3.0 is the minimum that they would need to have in order to be able to continue in the program. So because that undergraduate GPA doesn't meet the requirements, then they would be admitted on like a provisional basis where they would do 6 credits to start off. And then if they were successful with those 6 credits, then they would move on and they could do, 9 credits that following semester. So keep in mind that, 9 credits is what most of our students are doing. So if you're accepted on a provisional basis and you're doing 6 credits, that's only 3 credits less than, what everybody else is doing. And it's very easy to pick up those credits if you take a winter class or, you take a summer class. It's not meant to hold you back permanently. It's just meant to be so that we know that you're successful, and we don't bring someone into the program. We want you to be successful. So we want to bring students into the program that we know will be successful.
When is the next start date?
Winter 2023. So we are offering one winter class that would be a possibility for students, that they could potentially start in winter if they wanted to, or they can start in spring 2024. So those would be, we still have some openings for winter if they are interested, because those classes will start mid-December, December 11th.
Yep.
And then if they don't meet the time period for that, we would consider them for spring.
And so Dr. Cerrito, it's rolling admissions, right? So students conceivably they could start in the winter, they could start in the spring, they could start in the summer, they could start in the fall. Like the on-ramp to the program is pretty extensive. Very few barriers to entry here. And again, convenience is important, because again, at least part of the students in the group are probably going to be, full-time working professionals, or they're in their senior year of college, kind of looking at, oh, I'm getting ready to graduate, getting ready to kind of turn the page here. I need to know what's coming next. So that's what the flexibility is really, really convenient. With the new FAFSA start date, should we start with the process now? So that is a very good question. So for those of you who are wondering, the FAFSA now, the availability start date is in December, whereas it used to be October. So if you are a current senior in college and you're looking to start going to grad school either this upcoming summer, like the summer of 24 or the fall of 24, now is a good time to start the application process. However, it's not really going to affect your your financial aid process until December. So you have a little bit of time. I think it's just better for you to start to apply earlier rather than later, so that way you can start to get all of your application materials together. It'll help give you some clarity for what the next step is. And so you have a plan. And that way you can start to work with Dr. Cerrito in terms of putting together an academic plan for, for the graduate degree. That's a great question. There's a lot of good questions tonight. You can tell a lot of people have done their homework prior to coming to the event. So I don't see that we have any other questions. Dr. Cerrito, do you have any parting advice for the group before we sign off?
I just want to say that if you do have questions, because sometimes, and I know I'm one of those people where, as soon as I get off a phone call or off a Zoom meeting, I'll say, oh, I forgot to ask this question, or I should have asked this question, to please be in touch with us. Reach out to graduate admissions or myself. We're happy to answer your questions as they come up and help you make the decision that's right for you in this next step in your career.
Excellent. So again, Dr. Cerrito and I are happy to help in any way. So please do not hesitate to contact us if there's anything we can do. And have a great night, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.